Hi, my name is Kristen Yu, and I am presenting towards Disambiguating Quest as a technical term. I'm currently a third-year PhD student at the University of Alberta. Quests in video games are most oftenly associated with RPGs such as Skyrim. However, in recent years, other genres have been borrowing quests and quest-like elements in order to create a more complete experience. In academia, quests are also of particular relevance. In some previous work that I did, I was interested in the definition of a quest. So I looked at 20 papers that are from the PCG community that were focused on generating quests. In 16 papers, they had a quest definition, however, 4 of them did not. But the problem with those papers that did have a definition was that each of them was different. So there was no two papers that were using the same definition for their procedural content research. What I did was I took all of the common elements from those quest definitions to create a general quest definition. So there are a couple of people that might be interested in a general quest definition. The most obvious is PCG, because that is the origins of the general quest definition. However, there could also be interest from personalization researchers. Personalization research is when is research that's focused on creating a personalized experience for the player, and one of the ways that you can do that is through quests. Interactive narrative and storytelling research might also be interested in quests because quests are the main way that you can tell narrative and story in a video game. Video game quest theory might also be interested in general quest definition research, as well as the video game industry. Speaking of the video game industry, there would probably also developers who have thoughts and feelings about the quest and the quest definition. At AID this year, I'll be presenting a paper that focuses on this point of view, but for this paper, we are not going to be getting into that. Without a general quest definition, there are a couple of problems that kind of come up. The first one is that it can be difficult to new researchers. So researchers in any of those fields that I have already talked about might be interested in doing research related to quests. However, if they want to try to further the research, they either have to pick a definition from all the definitions that exist to figure out which one is best suitable for their own research, or you have to or they have to make their own definition, which kind of exacerbates the problem. The second thing is that it becomes difficult to compare work to each other. This is not to say that we cannot currently compare work to each other, but it would be easier if we were all talking about the same thing when we refer to quests. A general quest definition provides many benefits. The first is that it establishes a common language for academics and eventually the industry to talk to each other about quests in video games. It's also applicable across games and genres, so this allows us to make comparisons between those games without getting stuck in saying like, oh, this is an RPG quest definition, therefore I can't apply it to Animal Crossing. It also promotes collaboration. Not only does it promote collaboration within a field, but it can also promote collaboration across fields because all of the academic fields are all working with the same common element. And additionally, it allows for methodical exploration of quests. If we have the same starting place, we can then begin to talk about the ways that quests are used in new and interesting ways in different games. For the rest of the talk, I want to go through a quick overview. The first thing I want to do is introduce to you this general quest definition. So this is the definition that came out of the paper that analyzed quests from PCG focused papers. Then I want to apply that definition to a quest from Monster Hunter World. This will show some limitations of this original definition that I had created, and so I want to introduce some modifications to help address some of those limitations. And finally, I want to end with a comparison of quest definitions. This is the original quest definition that I am working with, and the first definition is that a quest is a partially ordered set of tasks T that a player must complete to get one or more rewards from a set R. I want to also more formally define what a reward is because reward can also be ambiguous. Under this quest definition, reward is either an in-game item, so those are currencies and other items that you can unlock. It can also be narrative elements, so this is unique to this quest definition that we consider reward elements such as cutscenes and dialogues to be a reward, as well as progression elements such as XP or unlocking the next level. Additionally, I want to more formally define what a task is. So generally, you can think of a task as the individual steps that a player needs to complete in order to finish their quest. However, this definition is one of the only ones that will actually define or more formally define what those steps are. So a task is made up of 4 things. The first is the condition C that must be made true in order to complete the task. M is the monitoring system that monitors the subsection of the game that's required to make C true. This is because games are large and complicated, and sometimes there's a lot of irrelevant information that you might not care about if you're focused on a particular task. I is the presentation of the task, so this is also unique to this quest definition, and it refers to everything that is shown to the player in order to help them understand how to actually complete the task. So this is things like text that might describe to the player what they need to do. These are things like markers on a map, which shows the player where they need to go, but it can also be more in-game kinds of things, like these highlights, which more clearly show where the player needs to go rather than having to check a map. RT is a subset of the rewards from the quest R, which is the set of rewards that are given to the player when C becomes true. We include rewards at the task step because it allows us to account for a reward schedule, especially when you consider that narrative is a reward for this quest definition. You can say that a dialogue that plays after you complete a task is part of the reward. Now I want to talk about how we evaluated this quest definition. In the paper, we focus on a couple of different games, including Rocket League and Portal 2, but for this presentation, I want to just talk about its application to Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World is a game published by Capcom in 2018 and it's considered action-adventure. The goal for the player is to defeat monsters and gain more items so they can do a lot of crafting and overcome challenges. This game is single-player but can also be multiplayer because you can party with up to 3 of your friends. For this, I want to also focus on just the quest, the Eater of Elders. So in the Eater of Elders, the player's task was slaying the monster, the Nergigante. That's the monster that's shown here on the right. In order to apply the quest definition, we need to write down the parts of the quest. We're going to find the set of tasks T as 10 different things. So the first 2 are going to be the break the left horn and the right horn. These are optional tasks and do not have to be completed by the player in order to actually finish the quest. Task 3 is to actually slay the Nergigante, which is required. Task 4 and Task 5, those are the failure conditions, which if the player accidentally completes those tasks, then the quest is considered failed. T6 through T9 are the tasks to carve the Nergigante. So after the Nergigante is slain, then the player has some optional tasks to gain additional items by carving the monster. And lastly, there is a 30-second timer that expires, which will signal the end of the quest. This 30-second timer starts when the Nergigante has been slain, and this indicates the window of time that T6 to T9 are available for the player to complete. Given the fact that there are optional tasks in this quest, I want to just discuss a single way that a player could actually complete these tasks. So this is not going to be representative of every possible way that a player could complete. We're going to say that our player completes T1, then they complete T2, then they complete T3, then they complete all of their carving tasks, and lastly they finish out the 30-second timer. The next thing I want to do is talk about the rewards. So there's some quest rewards here, and you can see there is a distribution that exists with the rewards for the quest. There's also the carving rewards. So these are the rewards items that are given to the player when they're doing the carving. There's also skill-based rewards. So this only happens if the player actually breaks the Nergigante horn, then they will receive the Nergigante horn item. So they have to be skilled enough to actually be able to get that reward. And lastly, there is some in-game currency. The next thing we need to do is more formally define the different tasks. So we are going to consider T1 and T2 to be the same because they are identical except that it refers to the left horn and the right horn. The condition, C is the condition that becomes true when the horn is broken. M is going to be the system that monitors whether a horn is broken or not. The presentation of this task is actually going to be these 2 horns here. Within Monster Hunter games, it is common knowledge that there are breakable parts on the monsters, so players that are familiar with the genre will be experienced and will know that the fact that the horns are really big indicates that they can probably be broken. Lastly, the reward for this is going to be the Nergigante horn item that you get when you break this. Next, I want to walk through how to apply the task definition to slay the Nergigante task. C is the condition that becomes true when the player slays the Nergigante. M is the system that monitors whether the Nergigante is slain or not. The presentation of the task is actually included in this guidebook here. So this is shown to the player before they actually decide to accept the quest. There's a couple of things that I want to point out here. The first one is this part here, which says slay Nergigante. So that's actually indicating to the player what they need to do to complete this particular task. There's also information on the failure conditions, as well as the reward money that you get from it. And finally, there is a little bit of in-game narrative that the player can choose to read if they want to. the last thing that is you need to define is the reward, but since there are still things that the player can do afterwards and the rewards are all given to the player at the end of the quest, the reward for the Slayer Gigante is empty. You can apply the task definition to the rest of the tasks in a similar manner to help understand how this quest is actually broken down into its pieces. When you get to the last task, T10, the final rewards are actually given to the player because that is most accurate to what happens in the actual game. Even though this quest definition does a pretty good job of explaining a lot of parts of the games, there are still some limitations that were highlighted in this application. The first one of these is the party system. The original general quest definition just assumes that there's going to be a single player, so it can't really account for any multiplayer settings. The second is randomized rewards. Because of its set functions, it just assumes that you want to give every reward to the player, so there's no way for us to talk about a probability distribution when you are giving a reward. Similarly, there's an issue with the optional rewards because if there's a reward in the reward set, then it assumes that you're going to just give that to the player, and so you don't have the option of saying, well, the player is skilled enough to get this, so then they're going to have an additional reward. Next, there is the issue of concurrent tasks. So as the player is waiting out the timer, they're going to be completing their carve tasks. Given the partial ordering structure, there's not really a good way for the quest definition to account for the fact that tasks can be happening at the same time. Lastly is the failure criteria. This also has the same issue of when it's going to be completed concurrently to when the player is trying to actually complete the Slayer Gigante task. However, it also feels kind of weird to be assigning tasks to the failure criteria, so it just doesn't feel quite right to have that be modeled as it is in the current definition. Given this, we want to introduce a couple of modifications to the quest definition to make it more general and more applicable in more scenarios. The first thing I want to address is the multiplayer. To fix this, we introduce a set of players P that can complete a task to the task definition. The second one I want to address is the randomized/optional rewards. To fix this, we want to provide a distribution over the rewards, so this can allow for the probability distribution or even be a piecewise function to account for the optional rewards. Next, I want to do a quest definition comparison between this new quest definition and a couple of other popular quest definitions. The first three definitions on this slide are quest definitions that are popular by citation, so these are the most popular at the time of publication. The first definition has 4 parts to it: the setting, the space, the challenge, and the goal. The next definition, you are required to bring in storytelling elements, interaction, an array of soft roles, player, and then situation. The next definition, we need to define the landscape, the player, the specific actions of collect objects or talks to characters, and then challenge and meaningful goal. This definition here is the original quest definition that I started out with at the beginning of the talk, and this is the new modified quest definition. Given all of these quest definitions, there are several aspects of the actual Eater for Elders quest that each of the definitions can account for. So if you apply all of the definitions to the quest, then you end up with the several aspects that are going to be able to account for describing the actual quest. So the first one is player. Then we have narrative, attacking, trapping, harming, or otherwise harming the Nergigante. Then you have slay the Nergigante. You have reward, presentation, challenge, and failure condition. So these represent the 8 things that we are going to compare each of the definitions using. This shows a high-level overview of the comparison for all of the definitions. However, I think it's a little bit easier to understand the overview using this chart. So the first definition by Ashmore and Nietzsche have 2 elements that are fully captured, but they have a full 4 elements that are not captured at all. Tosca has a similar issue where there are 2 elements that are fully captured and 5 elements that are not fully captured. By contrast, the new modified quest definition has the most elements that are fully captured as well as the least elements that are not captured. In conclusion, we took a general quest definition that was built out of academic research and applied it to the Monster Hunter World quest. Doing this shows some limitations of the quest definition that we had created, so we wanted to introduce some modifications to make it more general. Finally, we end with a comparison of quest definitions that can show some of its strengths versus other definitions. Thank you.